I am in a bit of a reading slump. February was not the easiest reading month, for sure. I read 3-ish books. There was one that I DNF'd. March is proving to be quite difficult in this first week. I have picked up a couple books, tried to get through them, and I'm just not there mentally, and so I haven't been able to really finish a book or get through a book, and I feel the weight of the slump upon me now. So today, I'm going to do my best to get out of it. There's plenty of tips and tricks that I have followed before that I've suggested to you guys to follow to get out of a slump. Buddy reading with a friend, reading something short so that you can actually finish it. Some people love to listen to audiobooks, reread a favorite book because you know you already like that one. There's endless ways that you can get out of it. And sometimes I do want to acknowledge that the best way to get out of a slump is to just not read and give yourself a break. But I really, really want to read something. So I am going book shopping today, and I'm hoping that by getting a couple books that I'm really excited about, it will motivate me to kind of start reading again. So we're going to hit a couple stores, find some fun things, hopefully, and come back and talk about it. But I'm going to take you guys along on my book shopping day, and yeah, let's go. First up, I'm gonna need a matcha and a bagel. It's March and we're still scraping off ice and snow. Books at the first stop. I don't know why. I think it was somebody that I was watching on booktube, and they had an arc of Frederick Backman's My Friends, which is supposed to come out later this year, but they didn't say it was an arc, and so I just kind of immediately assumed that My Friends was out, even though I knew that the date was May. It's not February, but I went to this bookstore looking for My Friends. It's not out. That's okay. I ended up getting Beartown, which I've been very excited to read, and I know this is a series as well, but I'm excited to kind of dive in and see what happens here. And then I saw this book called North is the Night, which I had never seen before, and it is based kind of off of Finnish folklore, and it says that it is, weirdly enough, good for fans of Adrienne Young and another author I've never heard of. But Adrienne Young is not typically like firmly in the fantasy genre. She kind of combined a lot of stuff with magical realism and fantasy, and the last book that I read of hers, which was A Sea of Unspoken Things, that wasn't fantasy at all. This book is very fantasy though that I picked up, and so I'm curious why it's being compared to Adrienne Young. I'll give a little bit of more of a synopsis of both of these books afterwards, but right now we're on to our second location for book shopping, and I really want to get Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, and we're going to see if Barnes & Noble has a copy of it. Let's go. It doesn't match the rest of my set. I had all of the paperbacks, which is what came out, and now they came out with the hardcover. This isn't gonna match.
Sad.
Hello. we are back from book shopping. I went to 2 stores, one that is kind of an independent bookstore near my house that I go to a lot, and then Barnes & Noble, of course. And I got 6 books that I am excited to read and excited to talk about. The first book I got is North is the Night by Emily Roth. I'm not sure how to say her last name. I've never heard of this author. I've never heard of this book, but I think it's a pretty new release because I saw it at both the independent bookstore and Barnes & Noble. Like I kind of said in the car, it seems like it's sort of based off of Finnish folklore. I think it follows these 2 friends, one named Siri, one named Aina, and Aina, I think, is dragged into the underworld by this terrible monster being, and Siri has to try and get her back. And it seems like Siri pairs up with this guy who is going to help her get Aina back, and Aina maybe pairs up with or maybe makes a deal with some sort of god in the underworld, not the one that dragged her to the underworld, but one that is, I guess, already there. They make a deal to try and get Aina out. So it's kind of these 2 separate stories that are happening in the same timeline. That's all I know about it. Again, I'm not familiar with this author. It's described as a sweeping fantasy adventure that is perfect for fans of Adrienne Young, which is confusing to me because I don't think that Adrienne Young writes sweeping fantasy adventures, in my opinion. But it looks cool. I loved the cover. I actually picked it up because I thought it was maybe going to be based off of Russian folklore and maybe similar to the Bear and the Nightingale series by Catherine Arden, which is one that I absolutely love. It kind of gives off the same vibes as that, which is, again, why I was initially interested, but I do think it's really, really pretty. It kind of seems relatively thick. It's going to be close to 600 pages, not quite 600 pages. I don't know if this is a series. I don't know if this is a standalone novel. I literally am going into it totally blind, but I'm pretty excited to read it. So that is North is the Night. And then again, like I said in the car, I also got Beartown by Frederick Backman. I was looking for My Friends and then realized that it's just not out yet and I got confused. So I picked up Beartown instead. The only other Frederick Backman book that I've read is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, and I really, really liked that. I know that he's written A Man Called Ove. I know he's written Anxious People, and those are some very popular titles as well. I'm very excited to read My Friends, but the other title that I've been wanting to read from him for a while now is Beartown. I sort of know what this is about. I know it takes place in a small town around a hockey team, around a tragedy that happens, and how the town is supposed to recover and move on from it. I don't know a ton about the story, but I know that people absolutely love this book. A lot of people say that this is their favorite Frederick Backman book, but I feel like all of his titles are super popular, so you could say that about any of them. But I'm excited to kind of start diving into more of his works instead of just My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry, because I really liked his writing style. I really like the stories that he chooses to tell, and this one has always seemed interesting to me. So that's Beartown, and I'm very excited to read this one. And then I picked up a book that I had never seen, never heard of before. I don't know anything about it, but one, I was attracted to it from the cover, and then I read the synopsis, and it just kind of seems sort of silly and fun. It's called Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher, who is apparently the author of the book Nettle and Bone, and I don't know what that book is either. So this is something that I am totally unfamiliar with. But again, I was attracted to it because of the cover, which is not an out of the ordinary thing for me. But I read the synopsis and it kind of seems like it maybe could be like a cozy fantasy thing. It follows our main character who I think inherits a bunch of money / land from her super wealthy family. Like her family dies or her parents die and she gets everything. But there's all of these extended family members like uncles and aunts that are vying for that money. They're trying to get around the will or trying to pull some weird funky legal loopholes in order to get the money and the inheritance themselves. And I think that they mistreat our main character, and one day she's locked in her bedroom or some sort of room and there's this ancient sword on the wall, and she somehow awakens this man that has been trapped in the sword. He's kind of like a magical being. It seems sort of like a genie thing where this guy was trapped in an object or within this sword in this case, and then whoever awakens this guy out of the sword, he is now bound to protect them. And the guy that comes out of the sword is like, all right, I'm ready to protect this girl that woke me up, and I'm gonna fight all of her enemies, and I'm gonna go to war for her, and I'm gonna go to battle for her. And the girl is just like, actually, I just have this crazy uncle that wants all my money. Can you like do some negotiations for me? And he's more protecting her on like a conversational level and an emotional level versus a physical level. And I think that that's a very interesting plot. I believe I'm interpreting it correctly. Again, it kind of feels like it could be be a cozy fantasy, something that's sort of funny, lower stakes, but just like a cute, fun adventure. I could be totally off on this. Again, I know nothing about this author, nothing about their previous work, and nothing about this current book, but it looked really fun. And after reading the synopsis, I ended up buying it for more than just the cover. So that is Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. The next book I got was, of course, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. I've been very excited for this book. I think it came out back in late February, but I do have to mention that I'm pretty upset that they came out with the hardcover of this version. I have the other two books from the Barnes & Noble edition, so Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. I have both Barnes & Noble exclusive editions, and the only one that I could find of this one is in the hardcover, and it just is, you know, it's different and it's taller, and I'm sad about it because now my set doesn't match, and I don't know why they did that. I didn't want to wait for a paperback or try to go to another store or order it online, so I ended up just picking it up because it's a cool cover anyway. But here we go, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. I think this is the third and final book in the trilogy that follows Emily Wilde. I really loved the other two books. I think they are definitely considered cozy fantasy. It's a fun way of writing. It feels kind of like you're reading Emily's journal entries or diary entries, and she's a very logical, analytical main character that is just fun to read about, and all of the side characters are funny, and it's an interesting adventure. And so I'm very excited to kind of finish out the trilogy and see where this story goes. But I'm still mad that this is a hardcover. Okay, and then I got a book that I have looked at for a long time and never actually ended up picking up and reading, just for various reasons, and that is Heartless Hunter. The second book in this series, I don't know if it's a duology or if it's going to continue on into more books like a trilogy, but Rebel Witch just came out, and I have heard so many people freaking out about Rebel Witch. I actually haven't even heard that many people talk about Heartless Hunter that much. I know that there are people that like it. I think some people that I've seen, some booktubers, have maybe said it's a little bit overhyped, but Rebel Witch specifically, I feel like I've seen more positivity around that book than I did even of Heartless Hunter. So I picked this up because I'm hoping that if this is a duology or the series itself, that it actually gets better as it goes on and as the story continues. Even if Heartless Hunter isn't amazing, I think I'm going in with pretty level expectations. I've just heard a lot about book 2, and so I'm curious. I think the reason I picked this up is just because I'm curious about these books. I'm curious about Rebel Witch specifically, but I have to read Heartless Hunter in order to get to Rebel Witch. I know this is very classic enemies to lovers, and one of our main characters is a witch and the other main character is a witch hunter, so it really doesn't get more enemies to lovers than that. So I am excited about that. I think this is young adult as well. I'm not sure. You know what? I have to say, this was a bit of an impulsive buy. This was total impulse that I ended up picking this up because they had the beautiful display out because of Rebel Witch and they had Heartless Hunter underneath it, and I was just like, you know what? Why the heck not? Let's just do it. I don't know when I'll read this one. I don't think it'll be immediately, but I am curious about it. I am interested to see how the enemies to lovers plays out and the story, and I am very curious about Rebel Witch, so that's kind of why I picked up Heartless Hunter. And then the last book that I ended up buying on this book shopping trip was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I have been so nervous to buy this book and read this series. I don't even really fully know why. I think I've heard a lot about maybe some of the trigger warnings in the book, but I have heard that the story and the characters in this series are just untouchable. So good. I think there's 4 books in it. I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang pretty recently, and I think that made me more likely to buy The Poppy War just because now I'm more familiar with her as an author, whether or not the writing style is the same. I know she wrote Poppy War first. They are probably totally different. Like, this is a fantasy. Yellowface is more literary fiction. Regardless, I feel more familiar with the author. I like her now, and I want to kind of start exploring some more of her other work and other styles of work. I'm in a big fantasy mood right now, as you can tell from most of the books that I ended up buying today, and I'm going through Throne of Glass right now, and just everything on my priority TBR list is fantasy at this point. So I'm just kind of riding that wave. I'm gonna give The Poppy War a try, even though I'm nervous about it. I think the story is gonna be amazing. I'm just a little nervous about the trigger warnings, but we will see. I'm gonna give it my best effort to get through this. I'm excited to see how it shakes out. So there we go. Those were the 6 books that I ended up buying today on my book shopping trip. This is my grand effort to try and get out of a reading slump. Honestly, even if none of these books are the next one that I pick up, it still is such a funny mental thing that just the act of buying a book kind of makes me excited to start reading something else. And now I'm like, all right, I need to decide what my next read is going to be because I need to start getting through my list because I want to pick up these books. Reading is such a mental game and it's so funny, but I think that this has made me pretty excited to start reading again. So hopefully this is what gets me out of the slump. If you yourself are in a slump right now, I feel ya, I'm with ya, but we can get out of this together. So out of the 6 books that I bought, I would love to know which one I should read first. If any of you have read any of these books, tell me what you think of them. Tell me which one I should pick up first, what should be at the top of the list, because I'm really curious what people have to think. As always, thank you so much for joining and watching, hanging out with me on this corner of the internet, and we will see you next time.